All right, everybody, welcome to the Heart of Sports Midweek OTA. Jeff Cohen and Jason Springer here. Jeff, I hope you had a nice Father's Day weekend. You get to spend a little time with your son and enjoy.
I did. Weather was good. Got to be outside and got to be with my son before he goes off to college. How about you?
My son is not going off to college, but it was. I told my wife that all I wanted when Brandon was born 3 years ago, she got me a baseball with his handprint on it.
I
And
remember seeing that.
it's a little container. And so I told her, like, all I really want is the same one for Adam. And so Brandon painted me some stuff and did some other stuff, but she got me the baseball in the holder. It says Happy First Father's Day with his handprints, and I can put them up on the shelf together. Again, just another way that sports intersects my life. It's funny how everything, like Brandon's out there running around, we're playing on Sunday, and we're hitting the wiffle ball and throwing the baseball around and just enjoying ourselves.
Well, I'll tell you a little secret. While you had paint on a baseball, this morning I was painting my son's car because he graduates from high school today. So he ain't going to be happy when he sees what his windows look like.
Did you use the paint that's going to come off, or is he going to be out there?
Yeah, it's like a crayon. It comes off.
Just checking to make sure. Well, congratulations. This is a proud and happy day for you. I know it was definitely a journey to get to the destination for you guys. So kudos to you, to Alex, to Jen, to everybody. It's awesome stuff.
So thank you. But by the way, talking about journeys, what about the journey that we saw from the E60 special this weekend on ESPN? I thought that was, we had Lisa Salters on Friday to talk about it. In watching the whole thing, it was two parts. It was a half hour long. It was pretty powerful to see what they went through, to see how persistent he is and how much faith he has in what he wanted to accomplish and how much being a dad means to him.
I've never wanted somebody I didn't know to succeed more in my life. Just on the field, off the field, the perseverance that he and his wife have shown, the openness to take this very difficult situation that they've gone through. And first of all, handle it in a way that they're able as a couple to go forward. And thankfully now they do have that child that they've tried so hard for.
A daughter, yeah.
But can you imagine going through all that and still having to go to work? But still having to go to work. His child died, and the day after he went and played a football game for the Niners.
Yeah, and nobody knew. They show the clip of him before the game on the sidelines. You don't know why he's reacting the way he is. The fact that he was able to play and focus on that is a
he's
pretty
really fast. He's really
testament
fast too.
Yes, he is very fast. Well, he was in the Olympics, wasn't he? In 2000.
He was in the 2012 Olympics in London. Yeah. His wife was a sprinter too.
Yeah, they talk about who they think is faster. So it's kind of cute to see, two people that fast.
They're a fun couple,
really fast.
And look, let's be honest. Lisa talked about for them the importance of people seeing a Black couple raising their child and being a family and having a healthy relationship. They believe that is important for others to see. And if you've watched I watched a little bit of their channel as we were prepping for the interview with Lisa. Their dynamic is hilarious. And I hope it breaks down stereotypes that people may have about things. And I hope that it helps. And it really is important what they're doing, I think. And I thought Lisa did a fantastic job as she talked about being trusted to tell somebody's story and the burden that comes with that. I really thought that they did it in a very tasteful way. There are ways to discuss these issues where you seek headlines and not results or solutions. I didn't feel like they handled this in a way where they sought to get headlines.
No, well, I don't think they ever do with these stories. And by the way, I don't know if you stuck around for part 2 of the E60 special. It was a repeat of a story from 5 years ago, which might be the biggest tearjerker story they've ever done, which is the story of Ernie Johnson as a father.
I have to go back and watch that. I did not catch that.
It is exhausting to watch. It is worth watching it. He's an incredible guy. You know, for people who don't know him, other than the fact that he's the straight man on TNT's broadcast with Shaq and Kenny and Charles, it is amazing to see how involved he is with the 6 kids that he has. The story about how they came to adopt Michael, the child that has a lot of physical issues, and the way that he handles his life both in the studio and then at home.
Have you leaned more on documentaries like this? It seems like I've leaned more on these than watching past games. I know you've watched some past games.
Yeah, well, no,
that doesn't do it for me. Other than the Eagles Super Bowl, that doesn't do it. The 08 Phillies, I was texting you that I was still getting anxiety watching Game 5 of the Phillies World Series clinching game, knowing how it ended and knowing exactly what would happen. I still got nervous when Tampa got a man on in the bottom of the 9th.
Well, so I was there for that, both parts, and we left the first part, and I don't remember ever being so miserable when it came to weather in my life. Yet it never seemed that bad on television.
No.
It was bad, but it never seemed as bad as it was when you were sitting in the stands and it was just sleet coming down and it was like little needles hitting you in the face. And it was cold as can be, and you just kept wondering how they were gonna deal with fielding the balls. And if you remember, there was a point at which there's a pop-up to Jimmy Rollins.
He drops it.
It just drops right next to him because the wind was going in every direction. If you watched the flags when you were in the stadium, it was crazy to see how the wind was just changing. And, you know, with the slick conditions and the Elmer Fudd hats that they had on, and, you know, it was an amazing experience to be there and to watch that game. But you're right. It just, when I go back and watch games, even when I know that the answer, what's going to happen, you still can get into that moment. But you're right.
Yeah, I was texting you while it was going on. I'm like, why am I nervous? I know how this is going to turn out. This makes no sense.
I will tell you, look, as much as I have been leaning on these documentaries and I have been watching old games, I am perplexed that I was driving the other day, and I think it might have been on ESPN radio. They were playing on the radio Doc's no-hitter from 2000 from the Reds NLDS, and I'm going, who needs to listen to a rebroadcast on the radio of a no-hitter?
Were you listening to 610? Are we ripping the station that we're on?
No, I don't know. I don't think it was on there. I think it was on the main network. So
okay.
I don't
Just make it sure.
No, I just thought it was odd to be. I'm like, and I didn't leave it on, but I have started watching golf again, so that made me happy. I did watch the Belmont.
Okay. Did that make you happy?
Well, I picked the winner, so yes, it made me happy.
made your wallet happy.
No. See, so I finally bet. I always go through the process of trying to pick the horse in the Kentucky Derby, and I wanted to bet on it last year, and the app that I downloaded wouldn't let me. So there was money sitting in there from last year, and now it's letting me. So I did, but I decided to go crazy and do the exacta. So I didn't.
That's what happens. That's what happens. You got the sure thing, and you just went for more, Jeff.
Mm-hmm.
I take it from somebody who knows how this works. Okay.
Yeah.
I will say this: you won't have to relive apparently past baseball because there will be future baseball. You won't be able to sit in the stands. Not says me, says the commissioner.
Yeah.
He apparently is going to impose a season on the players. Players are supposed to get back to him by 5 p.m. today, saying that they can report by July 1st and that they ratify the safety and testing protocol.
So
just like that, Jeff, snap your fingers. 3 months of ugly...
I got questions for you.
Okay.
So where are they going to practice? Because they've shut down all of the spring training facilities because of people getting sick.
I actually saw that the teams were going to be in their home facilities.
I heard the Yankees and the Mets were coming up north.
Except for Toronto. I believe that Toronto is not going to be... No, that's basketball. Toronto for basketball is going to be in the States. I don't know but I remember seeing something that the teams are going to be in the stadiums. I still think there's
Wait,
huge
you're telling
hurdles.
me that the plan is that every team is going to play in their own stadium, which means that they are going to be traveling.
That was the last thing that I had seen, and it looks like the way it's going to be is that they'll be in a reorganized East that could be extremely difficult for them, with the Yankees, with the Red Sox, with the Rays.
Yeah, but see,
I
that makes sense. My question to you when we discussed this last week is what happens to the teams on the West Coast? It's easy for us because we have enough teams within driving distance that they can bus from place to place.
It's
But
funny I'm used to doing the show on
where's
the radio, by
Seattle
the
going to
way.
play?
I'm used to doing the show on the radio where you can't see us.
Yeah,
So I tried to like cough away from the mic there and then realized that you could
didn't work.
still see me trying to
Yeah.
cough away from the mic. I don't know how that's going to work. I really don't. I don't know how any of this is going to work. I mean, you see it with other leagues. The National Women's Soccer League, Orlando dropped out because of how many players can't field the team. How many players have COVID right now? I mean, the Phillies have already had an outbreak. After the show the other day, as you said, they shut down spring training camps. There's still a lot of questions out there. But let's just assume that. Go ahead.
What's going to happen? Do you tag the runner, or is it going to be like a virtual tag?
It's like my son does. Air hug.
Right. Yeah. So is it going to be an air tag? So are we now going to play the proximity play that people used to complain about all the time? Is it now going to be, as long as you swipe within the direction of them, you're good?
If you're within 6 feet social distance, then you've got them. You must exercise. It's very difficult, and this is just one sport that's going to happen in all the sports. But let's look at if they do play. The Yankees, Rays, Red Sox, Nats, Braves, and Mets won an average of 93 games last season. That's with the Mets pulling everybody else down.
Right.
This is a
way to take your shot at the Mets.
I mean, other than the Orioles and the Marlins, this is a murderer's row of teams that they're going to have to play in 60 games. It looks like 42 of their 60 games could be against the Nationals, Braves, Mets, Yankees, Rays, and Red Sox.
So pitchers are going to basically pitch 10 to 12 times, and that's it for the season.
That's what it sounds like.
Yeah.
Apparently they want them to report July 1st. Games would start around July 29th. This is where baseball puzzles me. So and I asked you about this off the air. 3 months of this ridiculousness. Yes, I've worked in politics my whole life and around politics. It's ugly to watch the sausage get made. And everybody watched the sausage get made. And the problem is they didn't even finish the meal. They just had somebody drop over something else and say, here, eat this then. Because they didn't come to any agreement to make the sausage. We're going to go through this again in 2021. They left money on the table, left other things that they wanted on the table that the baseball agreed to because they wanted the ability to continue to be able to file a grievance against Major League Baseball. Is this the right decision for the players to now have to play 60 games without some of the additional things that you got agreed to?
No. It makes no sense whatsoever. The idea in this kind of situation, and anytime you're trying to resolve a dispute, is to resolve it finally. There should be finality to what you're doing. So if you're not going to resolve it with any type of finality, what's the point? It's just going to lead to constant mistrust, and it's going to lead to constant fighting. And if these players and these owners keep saying things during the course of these games that they're playing, people are just going to tune them out. And as you said, because they're starting so late, they're now overlapping other sports. So just when you had the opportunity to be center stage, you're not. You're relegated to the second or third stage now. I don't know what they're going to do because the NBA is planning, I think, on playing games throughout the day. So there's not going to be even a time of day that you can say baseball will be this time of day. The NBA will be this time of day.
All these leagues are going to be soccer's going to have a morning game at 7 a.m. and 2 night games. Basketball is going to play all day. Hockey will play whenever they want to play at this point because they'll be in a playoff mode.
By the way, did I hear that they're going to also allow advertisements on jerseys?
It seems like they're moving in that direction.
So we are just going to be watching KBO.
Where's your jersey? I thought you were going to wear it for the show this week.
I haven't lost enough weight to put it on.
You can't wear it to the virtual graduation today, so you've left it in the closet.
No. I think it's going to get handed down, but
It's going to get handed down.
It is a sweet jersey. I should show it to you.
Any more thoughts on the damage baseball has done to themselves by the way they've handled this? I just, for the life of me, I mean, you negotiate for a living. You literally do negotiations all the time. That is mostly your job. And you must be horrified by what you have seen from start to finish, the acrimony, look, things get tense at times, but a good negotiation and good settlement is when neither side is happy, right? You would tell me that as any good lawyer to give me advice. And it seems like nobody's happy, but nobody got anything they wanted either.
The good news is nobody's happy. So at least they've accomplished that part of the goal, but they don't have a resolution.
Well, exactly. So what was the point then?
I don't know, because I'm still concerned. You keep saying we're going to have baseball. I'm not so sure we are. I'm not so sure just when the commissioner puts out the schedule, whether or not enough teams or enough players are just going to balk at this, because there is an easy out to this, which is the health and safety of the players.
You're starting to see that in the NBA, some of the players saying that they're not going to come back and play. It's definitely going to be. Can you imagine the pressure on a player right now in that locker room who doesn't want to come back and play, to tell their teammates that they don't want to, we talk about the terms all the time in sports, go to battle with them. They talk about what it's like to be in a foxhole with somebody. And if you're that guy who has a compromised immune system or something else that's a concern, a young child at home, expecting parent.
But if you're a player, forget whether or not you have a compromised immune system. Why should you be placed in a position? I'm not saying I don't want sports back. I want sports back. But I don't want sports back enough that I'm going to be critical of any player who says they don't want to play because they don't consider it safe.
Can I play
devil's advocate? Family members, they have kids, they have parents, whatever it is. If they don't want to play, remember, they have enough money that if you or I had enough money that we could not go to our jobs and our jobs would put us or our families at risk, we would stay home.
But we don't.
Why are they any different?
Well, they should have that choice, but why shouldn't they have to go to their job like everybody else? I went to try and get a haircut yesterday. There was a 2.5-hour wait. The barber didn't have the ability to stay home. If they did, they made the choice not to get the money. Why shouldn't the player have that same situation?
Because they don't have to. My point was,
well, if they don't have to, then they can sit down. They can stay home. The woman who cuts my hair decided she doesn't want to cut hair right now.
They shouldn't be criticized because of that. If any person has the ability to minimize their risk because of the amount of money or the lifestyle they live, how can you criticize them just because they say, you know what, I don't feel like going and jeopardize?
You and I both know that the locker room is a different place. I'm not talking about the public perception that they would get from fans.
Fans are different too. I mean, if you remember, it's not that many years ago that fans were critical of players who took off when their wife was giving birth to their child, right? Mm-hmm. That has changed. So this is another situation where you're going to have fans, especially of teams that have a chance to win. For example, I think it was Lou Williams. I'm not sure. I thought he said that he wasn't so sure he wanted to come back for a variety of reasons. I'm just using him as an example. I'm not sure if it is him, but if it is, he's critical to his team's chance of success. If he doesn't want to come back for whatever reason, he doesn't want to come back, the pressure on him is going to be immense. But should it be? That's my question, is should it be that immense? We know it's going to be. I don't think it should be. I think that in these unusual times, you get special dispensation if you don't want to come back and play.
I'll be watching to see how people treat those players who decide not to go. It's definitely a dilemma for athletes that they haven't normally had. They talk about the ability to go and play a game, and now they've got other considerations as they go and do it. Speaking of other considerations, you wanted to talk a little UFC, and when you come to me and say, do you want to talk UFC? I never pass up the opportunity to talk UFC. And at first I wasn't sure where you were going with it, but the minute you said what it was, I knew what you were going, and I was there with you. So tell me what you saw, why it bothered you, and why you want to talk about this.
I have watched this multiple times. I have listened to the audio with the video multiple times, and I am left with this sense of sadness that sports has gotten to the point that life doesn't matter. It's very similar. This is in a worse way than what we were just talking about. But the fact is that
tell our listeners, if they didn't see UFC on Saturday night, tell them what they missed.
So I don't know the guy's name. I'm not familiar with UFC fighting. I don't watch UFC fighting. But what I saw was a guy who supposedly had cut a lot of weight. I think it was either cut weight or added weight. I think it was cut weight. Was fighting on short notice. Came out for, I think, the second round.
Max Roskoff, by the way, is the UFC fighter's name.
Okay. He got his head handed to him, went back to his corner, and said not once, not twice, but 8 or 9 times that he was done, including saying directly to his corner man, "Call it," which I understand is not something you hear very often from fighters. And the corner man, the first couple of times, would say, "Oh no, you're a warrior. You can go back."
It said, "You can beat this guy, Max. We got this." Roskoff replied, "I can't." Drysdale attempted to argue with him.
"I can't go." Yeah, and he kept saying, "I can't go out there. Call it, call it, call it." And the cornerman never called it.
No, the ref stopped the fight.
An official come over, and after asking the cornerman, then asked the fighter, and the fighter said, "Call it," and then they finally called it.
You ever seen anything like that? Isn't the corner supposed to be there for the good, the health and welfare of their fighter? Like, yes. I get it. You're motivating him, you're pushing him, and you're saying, "You can do it, you can do it." But literally, your guy is quitting and saying that he cannot do this. He's you know him better than anybody. He is physically not able to do this. He is mentally not able to do this. He is telling you all of those things. You know how hard it is for somebody who fights for a living to admit they can't do this fight, they can't win this fight, and here you are, your corner. You're not telling him, "Okay, we got you."
Yeah, I was shocked by what I heard. I was shocked by what I saw. And I don't know how this cornerman doesn't have, I don't know if there's licensures in each state, but he should have his license taken away. He should be suspended for at least a period of time. And they should be reviewing with every cornerman exactly what is going on and making sure that if your fighter says, "I'm out," you're not there to encourage them. They already know how to. They're fighters. That's what they're called.
It's a good thing they didn't let him go back out in that ring, though. Like, if they would have let him back out there, yeah, that could have been very, very ugly. Like I said, when you come to me and tell me you want to discuss UFC, I know that there's something you actually want to talk about with it.
I don't understand how they could allow this to happen and him not be suspended for a period of time, if not moved out of the sport, because he did not have the interest of his fighter. And we all know, we have all seen, I think it was Hector Camacho years ago, who hit somebody and the guy died in the ring. And those kinds of things shouldn't happen if they can be prevented. And God forbid he had gone out there. Not only could he have died, but you could have had long-term consequences. A lot of these people suffer brain damage from this.
We talked on the show.
Defend himself. If he can't hold up his hands, what was the point in sending him out?
Yeah, and it did. Other than like the hope that he might get a lucky shot and knock him out, he really had no shot. Like, he just wasn't in the fight.
Like he was going to be able to hold up his hands, let alone be able to react quickly to anything?
I mean, he had taken a beating in the start. He down 10-8 in the round, and he clearly knew that this wasn't his night. And the corner disagreed. I would be very closely watching. I'm curious to see what the commission will do to the cornermen and how that shapes how cornermen treat their fighters going forward, because I would think that this would prompt change, because you as the lawyer know This could have been huge lawsuits if it turned out differently with what is on camera there.
Yeah, I agree.
Real fast, I want to talk NASCAR in a second before we finish, but last week when we were on the air, you said until somebody was on a ventilator with COVID, you didn't think it would really impact people. I asked you about big names getting it. In tennis, you don't have a bigger name than Novak Djokovic, and he and his wife both have COVID now.
Wasn't he the
USTA.
same tennis player who said he wasn't sure if he was going to come to the U.S. Open?
Yeah, well, a lot of people have been ripping the U.S. Open for holding a tennis tournament. Serena has said she's going to play, but again, you're seeing circumstances with these athletes. You don't get much higher profile in the world of tennis. If this is an eye-opening to all of them to say, hey, you better take this seriously, I don't know what will be. I'm not.
Yeah, but tennis is unique. Tennis is like golf. Tennis might even be.
I just mean for the tennis world, not the general sports world.
Yeah, but I'm assuming he's either asymptomatic or he hasn't had serious symptoms yet. I haven't heard, but tennis is different because you are nowhere near your competitor. It's a very rare instance that you're near them at the net. So I wouldn't be as concerned about them playing as other sports like football or hockey, or even soccer.
It's a good sport
just
for
too
social
far apart.
distancing.
Yes, right.
I want to talk some NASCAR. Wow, NASCAR and UFC in the same show, Jeff. When did you think that would ever happen?
Next thing you're going to want to talk about pro wrestling.
We'll get there. Not this week. We'll get there. I'm breaking you down, Jeff. I'm breaking you down.
Well, the NASCAR thing's important, though.
NASCAR last week came out and said that they were going to no longer have Confederate flags at their racetracks. Bubba Wallace, the only, I believe, black driver on the NASCAR circuit right now, called for it to be done away. He drove in a Black Lives Matter car. Race at Talladega the other day gets postponed. At the beginning of that race, people going into the stadium, while there may not have been Confederate flags in the stadium, somebody flew a banner over the stadium with a Confederate flag with a banner that said defund NASCAR, and the streets lining the raceway had a lot of Confederate flags, but none in the stadium. Then after the race...
Well, I have a quick question, because they thought they were being clever. How do you defund NASCAR? NASCAR isn't federally funded or state funded. It's a private company. There's nothing to defund for those people that thought they were clever, but go ahead.
Yeah. And then Bubba Wallace apparently did not see it, but there was a noose found hanging in his garage where his car goes. And it was removed. NASCAR put out a strong statement. Marty Smith, if you haven't heard on ESPN, was very passionate about this. Yeah. And
as were a majority of the racers, who all stood in solidarity with him, including I think Richard Petty, who owns his car.
Richard Petty flew there to walk out with him on when the race was rescheduled on Monday, and you had all the drivers decide that they wanted to walk out with him. They pushed his car to the front of the starting grid. They all stood together in solidarity, clearly emotional for all of them. After the race, Bubba Wallace finished, I believe, in 14th. He was in third at one point, but he just sort of ran out of gas. I don't know if you watched any of it, but after the race, he went up toward the stands where there were a lot of African-American fans with Black Lives Matter shirts, and you don't often see that at the racetrack. And that was so...
Well, that's called progress.
I was going to say, what are we seeing here? Is NASCAR doing this? It's funny. I said to you, are they a vehicle to drive social change? And you said no pun intended. And I didn't pick up on that originally. But with the audience that they have, can they be more impactful with the actions that they're taking and the inclusion that's being discussed there than other sports with the platform that they have?
I don't know if it's more impactful. I think it's impactful. I think every sport can do something to be impactful. The difference between NASCAR and most other American sports is the large majority of people that are down south. Race car driving is not a big sport up here. Yes, we have Delaware and there's a race in the Poconos, but for the most part, the Northeast is
There's
not
New
known for
Hampshire.
NASCAR.
Yeah.
There are pockets.
Yes.
And there is a feeling that at NASCAR races that it is more of a homogenous body than in other sports. And so there is a chance here to make this sport more inclusive because of the fact that it was so not inclusive up until this point. It baffles me that anybody has a problem with a sport becoming more inclusive. This feeling that we have to have a flag at a game makes no sense to me whatsoever. You're there to watch a race car race, to be with your friends. Does anybody think that most of those people that were outside, what was it, Talladega, are really going to just give up NASCAR if they can't bring their flags into the stadium?
Well, nobody's asking them to give up the flag in their house. Keep the don't bring it to the racetrack.
Bring it to the race. So they'll come back, and if they don't come back, fine. If the reason you don't come back to a sport is because you don't want it to be inclusive, who needs you? I think that the net of this will be a positive.
Does NASCAR have the opportunity to expand their fan base with this? I mean, it seems like the way that the drivers handled it yesterday, if you watched that, it was moving, what they did. And then the cynic will say, oh, this was all set up, blah, blah, blah. I don't really think so.
What does I think the drivers. How will the cynic say that this was set up?
Because it made for good TV.
They didn't let him win.
But it made for good TV for that moment in time. And it made for a good story that got headlines. And it made for the picture of all the drivers where Bubba was taking the selfie with all of them in the background. And it gave NASCAR content to show this isn't who we are. And so the cynic would say they're just doing this to try and change their brand. It just seemed like it was more organic coming from the drivers and the crew than it was coming from NASCAR.
But even if they're doing it to change their brand, I don't understand the cynical part of it.
Well, it gets back to
they're doing something positive.
No, it gets back to the conversation we had the other day of, can bad people do good things? If you've done something that somebody doesn't think is appropriate, can you then turn it into a positive and do a good thing? There are people out there who say, you've done this before, you'll always do this. So just because you're doing this now, you're just making a show. You're not really changing, you're just making a show.
And my point is, and I have not coined the phrase, I've heard it from other people, is that it's never too late to do the right thing. And so if NASCAR is now taking this opportunity in this time in our history to come around and do the right thing, then more power to them. What would you do? Would you rather prefer them not do the right thing? What would be the point in that? This is about change, and it's change for the positive. Anytime that more people can be included, the better. There's no downside to this whatsoever, except for the few people that think that they need to have a Confederate flag, to raise a flag and wave around a flag of something that was the loser.
I think never a bad time to do the right thing is a good way to leave it for this week's Midweek OTA. Jeff will be live on the air at 4 p.m. on Friday on 610 ESPN. People can follow us on our social media accounts, on Facebook, on Twitter. Subscribe to the podcast. Give us a 5-star rating because you think Jeff is awesome. Whatever reason you do, that's cool. Jeff, any last words before we sign off for today?
Well, by then we'll also know more information or less information on what Major League Baseball is doing.
You took a clear stand there, just like Jello. Uh-huh. All right, Jeff, I'm even going to stop the recording this week without hanging up on you. So stick with me.
That's touching.
We'll be back on Friday, everybody.